2 of the top 30 entrances across films and TV.
Make hulu underneath the mango tree. Make hulu soon.
007 is a signature brand and a signature symbol for masculinity all over the world. Yes, Sean Connery and his successors may have had some questionable moments throughout the franchise's existence, but don't let that take anything away from the legacy James Bond has built. Now, the first movie, Dr. No, released in 1962, and they really needed it to work for the rest of Ian Fleming's novels to be adapted. Luckily, not only did they get an amazing Bond in Sir Connery, but they also got one of the most alluring entrances of all time in the form of Honey Rider. Yes, the names of the Bond girls are pretty messed up if you actually go through them, but I don't care about any of that because the way Ursula Andress makes a mark over here was simply outstanding. Mind you, this was an age where the internet didn't exist, let alone TikTok or Instagram, so Ursula had men drooling over her all over the world due to this one scene. When James Bond said, I'm just looking,
Stay where you are.
men of culture everywhere nodded in agreement. I should really shift to Switzerland, shouldn't I? Not only do they have secure bank accounts, they also have some of the most gorgeous women on the planet.
La da 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 mango tree. Make hulu underneath the mango tree.
Timothée Chalamet may not be a symbol of masculinity like Sean Connery, but he's got on with Kylie Jenner, so I wouldn't mind having that kind of riz either. However, the main reason I'm saying this is because of how he lands a massive impact with his entrance in Dune Part 2 as Paul Atreides. This has got to be one of the hardest entries I've ever seen in recent years, and the dude's able to do this without even having to open his mouth. Of course, a lot of praise has to be given to Denis Villeneuve, who directs the sequence to a T, thereby further enhancing the aura being exhibited by Paul. You can see that this isn't the timid boy from the first Dune film anymore. This is a man who's not even afraid of Shai Hulud anymore, which speaks volumes for his character. Man, can you imagine pulling up to a high school reunion like this? Now that would be an S-tier flex. Yeah, you could call this recency bias, but I don't care. Watching Gambit and Blade show up in Deadpool and Wolverine was probably the most genius move anyone could have suggested during the pitch meeting. Not only is this a great hit of nostalgia, especially for Blade, but it's highly meta, just like Deadpool's humour. Channing Tatum's Gambit movie got greenlit after which it got axed, so to see him actually donning the role was a pleasant surprise. However, nobody could have prepared me for Wesley Snipes showing up like that as Blade. He's a legacy character of sorts for Marvel, but more importantly, he and Ryan Reynolds weren't exactly the best of pals. Who knows, maybe they still aren't and it was all a facade for the big bucks.
Fuck! Now Disney gets cheap? It's like Pinocchio jammed his face in my ass and started lying like crazy.
Well, it still beats having to sue your own label after losing a rap beef to Kendrick Lamar. Anyway, the jokes are on point during this entrance scene, and while I do realise even Elektra is a part of the moment, she doesn't really add a lot, apart from the fact that she still hates Ben Affleck.
I don't like you.
You never did. And who's this? Succulent reminder of my own inadequacies.
And not higher up the order. The people in the cinema halls would go crazy at this part, and I don't just mean in India. If you've ever watched the IT Crowd, you'll know what British humour encompasses. It's surprising that a lot of people don't get it, but I'm sure this entrance from Douglas Rainholm has a universal appeal. For context, this dude is making an appearance at his own father's funeral, and guess how he shows up? In a flashy suit, while flinging the doors open and screaming, "Father!" in the most memorable manner ever. Matt Berry really finds a way to make things funny, and he really gives it a good go here. This also happens to be his character's introduction to us, which makes the whole thing even funnier.
Speak, priest!
We've barely known this guy for less than half a minute, and we've already seen him scream inside a church, knock down his dad's coffin, and then just get into a fight with a priest. What a legendary introduction indeed. And just so you know, my own father liked this scene so much that he's asked me to do this at his own funeral.
Myself? Goodbye, Father.
They don't really make westerns like they used to, do they? 1968 gave us Once Upon a Time in the West, and I haven't seen anything as good since, apart from, of course, the Dollars trilogy and a handful of others. Charles Bronson was a total heavyweight who brought charm and charisma to whatever role he played, harmonica not being any different. Yes, that's why he's named here. The old westerns seem to have some kind of obsession with this concept. Anyway, the moment harmonica shows up from behind the train to spook out Snakey and his men, we just knew that we were going to witness greatness in front of us. Bro played his own background music, and the lines he delivered right after were chilling to the core.
You brought too many.
Implied threats are the best, and they still work in this day and age, so it was a delight to see Bronson deliver such epic lines. To be honest, all the 4 actors deserved Oscars for what they did. Heck, even the horses acted better than 90% of the leading celebs today.
Black Adam. We should talk.
Dwayne Johnson may not be hot property today as he was a few years ago, but the man still pushed for a scene with Henry Cavill's Superman, so he deserves our praises for that. It's the last proper appearance of Kal-El in the DCEU, so watching him show his face one last time surely hit us all in the feels. When you look at this scene in general, it really isn't anything too grand. It's basically Superman just showing up to tell Black Adam they need to talk, implying he's going to kick his butt if they don't. However, once you combine all the news that was circulating before this movie was even released, it did give hope to DC fans all over the world, making them believe their favourite superhero wasn't going to go through a rebrand. Sadly, this only kept us motivated for so long, as James Gunn eventually cleared the air and let us know that this was truly the last time we'd get to see Henry as Clark Kent. It may have been a sucky cameo, but it impacted millions of people all over the world. Imagine going through the first 3 seasons of Supernatural, wondering who's better between Sam and Dean Winchester, only to then have this beautiful angel come along and steal our hearts. Castiel may have only appeared in the 4th season, but he became such a huge hit that they made him a core character along with the Winchester brothers, and a lot of that has to do with the way they introduced him. Bro walks in with lights shining everywhere, completely unfazed, as if he was shot and stabbed by Dean and Bobby. He was so calm and nonchalant during the whole thing that it made him appear as if he was the literal definition of aura. And speaking of aura, the way he displayed his wings in the shadows was so epic that it almost foreshadowed the kind of impact he was going to have on the show moving forward. Fans of the Supernatural series would probably put this at number 1, and I'll admit it's really solid, but I have to be fair, so I'm going to keep it at 23. If you ever wanted to know how girls would get plastic surgery done in the 1300s, here's Yennefer to show us all how it's done. Seeing her transform from her cursed form to her glow-up version was amazing in itself, but it's the entrance that does it for me. She commands everyone's attention in the room as she enters, and the resting face she had pretty much served as a huge middle finger to everyone who mocked her for her appearance. I swear, Tissaia and Fringilla were so taken aback by what they saw that it was like admitting instant defeat. Now, I know that Yennefer is actually one of the main reasons why the Netflix Witcher series was hated by the fans. This is actually her most popular moment from the entire show. It was from this point onwards that they did the whole bait and switch, turning Geralt into a side character in his own show. Man, people really like doing Henry Cavill dirty, don't they? Neo may have been the chosen one, but it was Trinity who kicked off the Matrix back in 1999, which was probably one of the best decisions ever made. It could have been easy to lead with Neo being shown in a simulation and all of that, but instead we got a badass opening which introduced us to a super badass character. Trinity doesn't exactly make an entrance in front of the cops who are after her, but she's shown to us in a super stealthy vibe, almost like an introduction, so that definitely counts for this video. Also, it's what follows that totally takes everyone by storm. Nobody went in expecting an epic action sequence right off the bat, so this scene really raised the bar for everyone who was in the cinema halls. Man, they could never replicate the beauty and success of the first Matrix film, which is a damn shame because I would have loved to see more scenes like this one. how does the MCU's big baddie decide to properly introduce himself to us in his first full feature appearance? Simple. He takes out Thor and the Hulk without either of them landing a single scratch on him. Yeah, the angry green giant does land some punches on him, but they clearly didn't do much to Thanos, which is what makes this scene even more menacing. The Mad Titan has a knack for making grand speeches, especially when he enters a scene, and I'm glad for that because this opening from Infinity War struck fear into the hearts of the audience members right from the get-go. Nobody expected Thanos to be so dominant, especially against the two strongest Avengers, and this appearance made us all wonder as to how on earth such a beast could be defeated. The part about knowing what it's like to lose, and then stating himself to be an inescapable destiny was top-tier dialogue delivery. Oh yeah, and he also kills a couple of gods whilst he's at it. Game of Thrones has had some seriously messed up villains, but none of them have come as close to the Night King in terms of being terrifying. That dude could probably scare Freddy Krueger with the way he looks you in the eyes. Seeing him for the first time was the closest to a surreal experience you could get while watching something on your TV or laptop. Everyone, including Jon Snow, was shocked when they witnessed his magic for the first time at Hardhome. Yeah, that name makes a lot more sense now that we know what happened there. It wasn't just him walking into the scene that made it so epic though. It was when he raised his arms and turned every corpse into a freaking White Walker. It really showed the Night King as a supernatural force, an inhuman, ominous foe of immense power. It made the quarrels within the world feel unimportant. This is it. This is the true enemy. They could have done something really special with this dude, but we eventually got that mess with Arya killing him instead of Jon. You know what, we haven't seen much from this film in a while, and it really is a great entry for us to remember that Iron Man actually had solo sequels to it. The entrance Tony makes at the Stark Expo was legendary to say the least. This is freaking Iron Man, coming to a show that celebrates everything he's about. It's also kind of cool that Tony wears a suit underneath his main suit, but most importantly, this scene establishes exactly why he's known as a bad boy billionaire. Bro dives into a party, whereas guys like Captain America have to dive into war zones. The AC/DC gem Shoot to Thrill has pretty much become Iron Man's official song at this point, and it doesn't disappoint here. Tony Stark's appearance is meant to be grand and opulent, so I'd say this presentation fits the bill perfectly. Man, I can only imagine how this dude would have arrived at his own prom.
The man Cockroach knew would be just right.
Esta tierrita a mí me gusta, Pablo.
Yeah, you guessed it. Pablo Escobar. The man who would change my life forever.
Everyone's gangster till Pablo Escobar starts naming you and your family members. Yeah, the most feared drug lord of all time never hesitated to play dirty, and you could see it in full flow when he made an unexpected appearance into the lives of Colonel Jose and his men. At first, these guards tried to act tough in front of him, making him believe they're paid well enough to avoid taking bribes. However, in the case of Mr. Escobar,
Tiene una mujer que es una belleza, ¿sí o qué? ¿Sí o no? Es una mamacita.
it's less about the bribes and more about the consequences of not doing whatever the heck he orders you to do. The moment bro started naming family members, those guards knew exactly what he was doing, and all their sass went down the drain. I love how during this particular moment, Pablo's not threatening anyone, and still threatening everyone at the same time.
Y bien, me gano la vida haciendo negocios, así que pues fresco, tranquilo. Ustedes pueden aceptar mi negocio.
The way he stamps his authority only solidifies his status as an unbeatable gangster, and I gotta hand it to Wagner Moura for pulling off such a great performance.
But DOS was Colombia's version of the FBI.
Now that's a superhero landing.
I got this.
This has got to be amongst the biggest gags of 2024, especially for the MCU fans who were hoping for tons of cameos from canon characters. I've got to say though, the most disappointed out of everyone here was clearly Deadpool. Bro was so hyped to see Chris Evans in his own movie that his energy almost transferred to all of us. Unfortunately for him, he was expecting this to be Steve Rogers, and not Johnny Storm. Fans like yours truly won either way because we got to see the Human Torch with his flame on while Deadpool just stood there completely clueless as to why this isn't Captain America. It was such a fake out that you can't even be mad at it because of how genius it was. But yeah, seeing Chris Evans in a Marvel film after Avengers Endgame was definitely something. I know he had a cameo in Far From Home, but I don't want to count that.
You see anyone running, dick for brains? You're not gonna love what happens next.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, he's gonna say it.
Rise, my friend.
You know you're a total badass when you're able to get Darth freaking Vader to bow down to you upon your arrival. Darth Sidious arriving in Return of the Jedi has got to be one of the most subtle entrances I've seen in terms of the character not doing anything flamboyant. Bro just steps into the scene and casually chats about the Death Star with Vader, who was actually looking a little bit nervous at the start of this scene, believe it or not. I wonder how many of those Imperials and Stormtroopers were thinking, God damn, when they saw Darth Vader kneel before someone else. This is the kind of treatment that would have given Daenerys Targaryen her greatest pleasure. Also, it's amazing how Ian McDiarmid portrayed the elderly Darth Sidious at the relatively young age of 37, and then 16 years later, he portrayed a younger version of Sidious. The world of Star Wars is indeed an amazing one, unless of course you're referring to anything that's come out from 2015 onwards.
The Death Star will be completed on schedule. I was totally hyping up Superman in an earlier entry, but let's not forget that this movie is actually centered around Black Adam, who also gives us a pretty spooky sequence when he makes his own appearance. Bro doesn't even have to show his face for the most part, as he mocks the humans and their weapons quite openly before literally frying one of them to a crisp. This was definitely fit for an R-rated stamp had it not been for the immense toning down the visual effects team had to execute. Well, at least The Rock made sure to execute all those weaklings who thought they could actually have a chance against him. It's literally a trope of the main character showing up, being unimpressed by his ops, and then taking them down in a jiffy. I just love the shot of him ascending and then leaving the cave with unlimited aura. They made him look so godly with this. If only the movie kept up with the momentum from this point forward.
Multiplying villainies of nature do swarm upon him.
What the hell? Bugger off!
Disdaining fortune.
Hugo Weaving may be best recognized as Agent Smith from The Matrix, but to me, his most legendary role will forever be as V from V for Vendetta. This scene here, where he makes an appearance to save a rightfully distressed Natalie Portman, is the perfect example of acting being accentuated by the dialogue. The way in which V speaks while assassinating Evie's attackers was so classy that you wouldn't even want to classify it as a murder. It felt more like an education, which says a lot about the man. I bet he'd try to replace the A+ score with V+ if he had the authority to do so. There's also another funny detail when V converses with Evie. Bro's probably not had a normal conversation with another human being in years, so he's just too excited to be able to talk with someone else. This causes him to go overboard, which also leads to him getting embarrassed. That's completely fine though. With skills like those, no one's going to be complaining about his verbosity. Okay, so this entry is a unique one, because I've never really covered hybrid films of this type. Having said that, seeing Jessica Rabbit for the first time in this film definitely had men drooling all over her. Yeah, you could even say that she popularized the whole trope of the anime waifu that's so prevalent nowadays. Jessica's entrance is her performance, which means that we have a whole musical sequence fueled with seduction presented in a manner that just barely touches the PG-13 rating. That too, mainly because of the dress she's wearing. The performance in itself was pretty amazing. But how about we all give a standing ovation to the animators who had to draw the character by hand and animate her into live action footage without the use of CGI or other such visual effects. Maybe drawing her body was enough of a reward for those guys, eh? Top 10 time is finally here, so I've decided to treat you to a scene that was only released in 2024, but will definitely go on to become a classic. The cameos being there were already good enough, and then we get to see the whole squad pull up to what I consider to be the best battle sequence of the whole movie. The entrance had everything from swag to class to even an epic line from Wesley Snipes himself.
There's only been one Blade. There's only ever gonna be one Blade.
Now, I think the studios actually took him seriously if we consider the rumors of the new Blade film getting shunned. The scene gets even better when Wolverine pops out of the trunk and looks at X-23. She smiles back at him as if to say she's proud of him. After all, Logan is the closest thing she's ever got to a father, and she knows they're ready to kick some serious butt. I'm all for making a loud entrance, but I don't think anyone could have interpreted that the way Quint did in Jaws. The screeching noise caused by scratching a chalkboard can be amongst the most annoying things you can ever subject your ears to. So Quint decides, yeah, this is how I'm going to make my entrance. It turns out to be super effective, as he not only stuns the people at the meeting, but the audience as well. Everyone's attention turns to him as he gives them a whole minute of straight talk, thus establishing the entire character's persona in less than 100 seconds. It's a great piece of direction from Steven Spielberg, and an even better display from actor Robert Shaw.
Homie, know how I earn a living? I'll catch this bird for you, but it ain't gonna be easy. It's bad fish.
Oh, God!
This is one of the most legendary horror movies of all time, so it's hard for me to pick a particular scene. There's the obvious chestburster scene that totally shook the entire world of humans as well as cinema. Then there's also the appearance of the fully grown xenomorph that attacks Dallas. Both entries are good enough to land on this list, but if I had to pick something deserving of the number 7 spot, it's got to be the chestburster scene, hasn't it? It's just so perfectly executed and has been mimicked endless times since then, but nothing's been able to come as close as to what this particular moment established. If only Ridley Scott brought that same energy to Gladiator 2 as well.
No, touch it!
Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Mr. Bond, I suppose you wouldn't care to, raise the limit?
I have no objections.
We started this video with Dr. No, and here it is again, giving us what is easily and by a massive distance the best ever introduction to James Bond. 007 has been the ultimate giga-chad for young men for decades and decades, and it all started with Sir Sean Connery giving us this absolute gem of a scene. Bro casually introduces himself to Trench, but the aura he exhibits must have won her over in the very first seconds. Yeah, I know it's his movie, so they have to show the gorgeous women falling for him, but believe me, if a man ever introduced himself like this even in today's world, I'm sure he'd be rizzing girls left, right and centre. The man even tips the dealer and the doorman with such subtlety that you need to pay close attention to realise it actually happened. What an absolute boss.
Thank you. Have those changed, will you? Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you?
This was the moment that showed studios they could make serious money off superhero movies, and what a moment it was. Clark Kent quickly changes into his outfit to save Lois from a helicopter, which sounds like a very normal day for the Man of Steel, but since this is the first time anyone actually sees him in action, the scene leaves an impact that's lasted an entire legacy. It's a brilliant introduction to the character as it highlights what's important to him as a person as well. I also love how at such a critical moment, not to mention when he reveals himself to the world, Superman still has time to be polite to a, how do I put this? A middleman of good times.
Hey, Jim! Woo! Excuse me. That's a bad outfit! Woo! Okay, President, move these people out!
Colonel Landa, voici ma famille.
Nothing that Quentin Tarantino has written or will write can ever come close to the absolute masterclass that is Colonel Hans Lander's first ever scene.
Je vous remercie pour le lait et pour votre hospitalité.
This is cinema at its peak, and it was this moment alone that let everyone realize how big of a hit Inglourious Basterds was going to be. Christoph Waltz commanded the audience during his introduction without having to even raise his voice. As a matter of fact, bro is more polite than an S-tier Canadian, although that stereotype doesn't really apply that much nowadays, does it? Anyway, this character entrance is an all-timer in terms of villains, and I really hope to see more of Mr. Waltz in the future.
Monsieur Lapetite, vu ce dont nous avons à discuter, il serait préférable de discuter en privé.
We all love and support Wanda and Vision's relationship, but let's be real here, it is pretty messed up. A witch is loving a sentient droid who's probably not more than 3 years old if we consider the film's release date from Age of Ultron. I mean, that is a bit too much even by Drake's standards. Well, Steve Rogers doesn't judge because he believes in a free world, so he gives us an epic entrance when he spooks the living daylights out of Proxima Midnight right when she was about to end the couple. The flawless transition from the shadows to the light was what made the audience lose their mind, and I'd give everything to watch this scene again for the first time.
Won't you spare me over another?
It's been over 14 years since we've seen this episode, and it still remains the best character introduction I've ever seen on TV. Death is something you can never escape, so if you actually see him in person, there's only so much you can do to stay alive. The way he gets out of the car and walks amongst the petty mortals was classic, and you gotta feel bad for the guy who died right after bumping into him. Bro literally brushed shoulders with death. Not a single word was said here, and it definitely didn't need to either. On a side note, I love how death is the only thing Dean is scared of. I mean, he talks back to angels, demons, Lucifer, God, Amara, Leviathans, and every other entity he's come across. When death tells him to sit down or shut up, he does so immediately.
Sit down. Took you long enough to find me. I've been wanting to talk to you.
Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.